Hello and welcome to Shift, a podcast on shifting paradigms of transformation. My name is Jonas Grüner and I hope you enjoy listening. In this episode of Shift, I have the absolute privilege of talking to Pascal Hazeleger. He is involved in a neighborhood community project called the Blue Neighborhood Economy in Spijkerkwartier in Arnhem in the Netherlands. And he tells us about what they're doing there, how that foundation and the community center are set up, what kinds of projects they do, why those projects are so important to the people that live there, and what value they get out of it, the challenges that they're encountering, and how they're working on bringing their collective vision to life, and what they do to master those challenges. This is the first episode of Shift that's also on video, so if you're only listening, you can find the link to the YouTube video in the show notes. And also you can find any links to resources, books, organizations, frameworks that we mention in the show notes. All right, without further ado, I'd say let's get into the episode. Hey Pascal, good to have you. Thanks for taking time to chat about community building and what you're doing in the Netherlands. Can you maybe just introduce yourself real quick? What's your name? What do you do? And why are you here today? What are we going to talk about from what I've already told you?
Yes, well, first of all, I want to thank you, Jonas, for inviting me. It's a big honor when somebody is interested in what you are doing. So thank you for that. Really excited to be here. My name is Pascal Hazeleger. I come from the Netherlands. I live in Arnhem together with Jan Tien and my 4 children. Professionally, I am mainly involved in creating networked organizations. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build these organizations for ecosystems. So that's it's all very abstract, but probably we'll get into some more details which will explain what I'm doing. But it has to do, in essence, is that we are trying to solve complex problems, and we define those complex problems as problems that cannot be solved by creating a product or a service. And you could say that it doesn't fit within the paradigm of producer-consumer. So that's one of the main paradigms through which we look at the world and try to solve problems. But when you use that lens on the world, there are a lot of problems that remain on the table, like climate change and like COVID, which also was a complex challenge. So that's those kind of challenges is what we have in focus, and we build networked organizations and supportive IT solutions to help people play different roles, show new behaviors, and through these new behaviors try to resolve complex challenges.
And what kinds of challenges are those usually?
What we are focused on, and it's also something that more or less you learn after a while doing it, that you begin to recognize the patterns in what you have actually been doing. And what emerged for us is that the challenge we usually have is that we want to bring learning and innovating together, and not only bring them together, but also bring them in the flow of work. So to solve complex problems, yes, we have to be innovating with people who are actually in the proximity of the challenge, who are really close to the challenge, and they are the people who are the most interesting to be learning with and to be innovating with. So we focus in the Netherlands here. These groups have all start with a B, but in English they don't. It's construction workers, it's people who build things, it's farmers, and what we call civilians, citizens. Those are our main focus groups.
Cool. Sounds super interesting. That's not actually the reason why we're having this conversation today, but I'm sure it informs a lot of what you do with community stuff. So the two of us actually met at this community building conference in Belgium called Micro Solidarity Gathering about a month ago. And we had dinner together one night and started chatting, and you started talking about the volunteer work or like your projects you're doing on the side with your neighborhood community center. And can you tell us a little bit about that? What's it called? What's it about? What are the different parts that play into it?
Yes. It's a foundation called, with a really nice Dutch name, the Blauwe Wijk Economie, which is something like the blue neighborhood economy. Very literal translation, but that's okay. It's a foundation that, as its working area, has a neighborhood in Arnhem called Spijkerkwartier. So that is our focus. That's the ecosystem we have in mind when we want to try and create solutions for that. It's a neighborhood scale. And what we try to create is a neighborhood that has strong social fabric, something we talked about at our gathering in Belgium, the Micro Solidarity Gathering, where I think that's also why Micro Solidarity is so important. It's the focus on creating social fabric, which is an answer to a lot of problems. Inclusivity, so we want everybody who wants to participate should be able to participate in the projects and the initiatives we do. And circularity, which is really one of the main drives, is how do we get our neighborhood through the energy transition, which is something that's very, very in our focus at the moment. And we do this with two things. One is what we call our method, our idea of how to bring about transformation in the neighborhood. And we run what we call a living lab, which is called DAZO, and that is our neighborhood center, where we try to bring together players from the ecosystem, which could be municipality, business owners, knowledge institutes, of course the civilians themselves, the citizens, and we get together and we more or less look what we call what is our shared dream. So that's a process where we have to find our shared dream. And through the process of finding that shared dream, we also make something which we call the map of interests. So everybody has a clear and open. It's very open. Why everybody is at the table? Why are you here? What do you want to do? And from that we formulate our first experiment to more or less bring that dream that we have into reality. And usually it takes more than one experiment, but sometimes you're lucky and and that's when one's enough. We've had that, but not too often.
Cool. And so when you say it's on neighborhood scale, like how big is the neighborhood and how many people is everyone aware that this is going on? Everyone that lives in the neighborhood, is everyone kind of involved? Or what's the like level of excitement in the neighborhood about this project?
Yes, yes. Well, in that sense, we're very privileged because Spijkerkwartier in Arnhem is a very active neighborhood. Also has a lot of social fabric that already existed that you did, and then you can see the value of it because that was already there. It's very natural to let new initiatives more or less flow from this social fabric.
And how many people is it approximately?
Oh yeah, sorry. It's 6,400. That's the number of people in that neighborhood. I don't know. I think there's something. I don't know how many houses it is, but I know that the number of people are, let's say, 6,400, and we did a survey, and we found that there are approximately 60 work groups in that neighborhood. So that gives you an idea of that's really a large number of groups. So we more or less estimated that we have about maybe 300 to 400 people who are in, and it could be like taking care of a garden in the neighborhood. It could be participating in how to spend some sort of tax money, or like we are doing projects that more or less help us become more circular and bring us closer to these targets for the energy transition.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing that there's so many people that are involved. And I imagine they, like the 300 to 400 people that are actively involved in some work group or in some way, they are like going back to their like little bubble within the community, maybe their family or like their direct neighbors. And so like if you have 300 to 400 people, that's like almost 10% of 6,400, or like in the neighborhood of that, a little bit less, 5 to 10%, something like that.
Yeah.
But they are like the sensors and the actuators of this organization or this community center thing. I feel like that's a pretty good ratio for being connected to the community.
It's a really good number. It's I think something we also talked about in Belgium. It's the 1990 rule. 1% is very, very active. On the 6,400, that would be 64 people, and 9% is contributing. So that kind of gives you a larger number than the number I gave. But that's the potential that we have, that we actually have a group of people who are actively and contributing to improving the neighborhood. So we want to build that group. We want to see if we can build that group and create more social fabric in this group, because it's a lot of. And that's also why I'm so interested with micro solidarity. There's a lot of focus on concepts. Everybody has a wonderful concept and a wonderful idea, and I have no opinion whether that's good or bad. But there's this thing that as soon as a project is ready to get into action mode, after dreaming and getting a clear idea about what it is that we want to do first, then we get to the how. How are we going to run this experiment? And then you see that people fall back in a lot of traditional ways of approaching an experiment. They start looking for employees, to put it a bit, and suppliers. So we start working in the normal way or how we organize ourselves to face a challenge. And that's always this organizing that is focusing on bringing forth a product or a service. Mm-hmm. And this is so ingrained. This is so it's nobody is discussing that, and that's really odd for me that we are not having a discussion about how are we going to approach this.
Yeah. Okay, so just real quick to clarify social fabric, if people are not familiar with the term, or if it's like sounds interesting to you, but you have some idea but don't really know what we mean by that. It just means like the social relationships that are already there within a community, like all of the things that can't really be described in formal terms. It's not like my role is, I don't know, it's not the relationship between job titles, but what's happening in between that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the whole sum of all of these relationships within a community that literally make up a fabric. Like if you think of one relationship as being like a thread, and all of the different relationships they weave together into social fabric. And Pascal and I are both really excited about it.
Yes,
and there's a couple more people that are.
I think so too. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get back to what you just said about the normal way of doing stuff versus some other way of doing stuff.
Yeah.
It sounds like you have some idea about. There's the default way of thinking about, okay, developing products or services, and what do we need for that? A supplier, employees, some kind of product development process. And then it sounds like you have an idea about a different kind of approach that produces something else. And I'm interested first, why do you think it's a good idea to look at different approaches? And second, what do you see is the value of that? Trying something different. And then maybe third, what's your best guess at a good process and at a good different process?
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry for throwing three questions at you all at once, but
just if you remind me later on.
I will.
Yes, I think it's essential that you also discuss about how you want to reach a result, because the way you create outcomes together as a group is more or less ingrained with the way of how this outcome was produced. And I think we want to see a change in the world. We want to see different kind of relationships around us. And what surprises me sometimes is that we formulate these wonderful projects, and we all agree about the motivation of why we are doing that project. But let's say, and usually it has something to do with discussions in our neighborhood center are a lot about the lived world and the systemic world. And we want to create a better world that is more independent from the whole systemic world that we are more or less engaged in. But we use the methods of the systemic world to produce these new outcomes in the lived world, and we expect different outcomes. But actually, by mimicking what the systemic world is doing, we can produce all the outcomes we want. They are colored by the methods and the ways we interact with each other. Yeah,
that's so profound what you just said, and I kind of want to riff on it for a second, just to frame it a little bit differently and to see what emerges. So what I understood from what you just said is when we try to build a new world where we can relate differently to each other, but try to do that with the tools we take from the old thing that we want to leave behind us, then we'll inevitably like transport some of the underlying values and worldviews and perspectives that inform this old way of doing stuff into the new, and then it won't be as pure and new as it can be, or that's like the best case scenario, it's just not as good, and the worst case scenario is it's exactly the same.
It perpetuates the same problems, yes.
Yeah, yep. And that's what I find so profound about that is it highlights process over outcomes. Because in this, like in the, I think you called it the systemic world, I would say like industrial capitalism or something like that. Probably. It's a lot about producing results, and not so much, it's about producing results and not about producing results.
It has to be efficient.
It's not about the process, it's about what comes out of it. So when we're so focused on what we get, that we can't think about how we get there, and then there's something off.
And that's a terrible, tricky one, because like I do it as a volunteer, but I'm not the only one. There are a lot of people who are volunteers in our neighborhood center, and they are all passionate about doing something good, however you define it. When I listen to them, I think, yes, these people want to do something good, that's clear. There's no argument about that. But they also have talents that they want to bring to the table to help this producing these outcomes that we all desire. And guess what? A lot of those times, those talents are more or less cultivated in the systemic world, and they are so much linked, because if somebody's very good at planning and he wants to offer that talent to us, creating this better world. The way he frames that planning challenge is is more or less perpetuating the systemic world in our lived environment.
Yep. Yeah.
So you're probably familiar with the golden circle. Start with why, what, and then how. Is more what Simon Sinek was more or less drawing our attention to. And for me, it now is why and then how. And then we eventually will see what we're going to do. But
yes,
I want to have, and you can understand why, but that I want to have this discussion about how we are going to do things before we actually start. Just to more or less, because we still need all those talents that all these wonderful people bring to the table, but we have to more or less reframe them a little bit, so that they are actually bringing those results in this group also, that we are really enjoying bringing these new things in a different way.
Yeah. I love this. Yeah. The hard skills of, like, I don't know, planning a solar power plant, or like programming or gardening are still like the same. That the hard skills don't change, but the value context in which they happen. It's like this really subtle thing of what are all of the assumptions and expectations that I bring to a work process. That's what needs to change. I'm curious, what do you see? Like, what's a better how?
That's a better how is, for me, is micro solidarity, is the 5 skills that we can show on our hands. It's also. I loved it when we were in Belgium. I was in a crew with Rainer, and a friend of his had written a book, and just the title of the book says it all, in my opinion, and that is "New Work Takes Inner Work." And I guess that is what we have to have attention for when this group of people sits together, not be distracted by what it is that we want to do, but actually really connect with who is there, actually seek what is the potential of that, of this little group here. What is the highest potential that we can reach just together as a group? Not what can we do? And when you start, you let what we can do emerge from this group, then you probably have something that everybody feels connected to, everybody feels energized about doing, and that's there's so much potential in working with energy instead of trying to collect energy to do this one specific plan that somebody else had thought out or whatever.
Yeah, emergence. You just said that magic word that always turns me on. It's like, emergence.
Yes.
And we talked about this a little bit offline before we started the recording. I sent like a couple of topics I would like to discuss to you beforehand, and one of the questions in there was like, the way I see it, community and social fabric, and like this sense of, we're doing something right here. People feel really connected to this community. They feel like they belong. They are living a fulfilled life through this community, through giving and receiving support. And that is not something you can do. It's something that needs to emerge. And for emergence to happen, it's not just random. There's certain conditions that you can create within which certain things will more likely emerge and others won't as likely emerge. So I'm curious, what do you see, like, where does this already work well in your community? And what are some of the conditions that enable these things working well?
I think that what we are getting a good, let's say, a good sense about what is alive is in the process of gathering dreams and more or less sharing those dreams with municipality, knowledge centers, corporations, where we are more or less embodying this participating of cooperating citizen. This citizen that not only wants to be the consumer of some service or some product, but is actually part of the process of creating what it is that we are all seeking. And that role and more or less enabling our people in our neighborhood to even become aware that is even an option. That is beginning, but community building and everything, a different way of working, it all takes time. You have to have a long-term passion, actually. You have to, because eventually when you make that switch away from products and services and you start focusing on the people, that in and of itself is switching to a long-term view.
Yeah.
So actually that's the and it's what in micro solidarity is often called people before projects. And you can imagine that we are doing in our living lab a lot of experiments, which are small projects, and these projects give us a good reputation and help us to create attention for what we are doing in the neighborhood. And to actually, I did say it, and to say that we have to switch to this mentality of people before projects, that is of course a bit of a difficult remark in an environment where everybody is just doing projects. And we are there is really the process of experimentation and actually framing what you are doing as an experiment and not as a project is also very important. And you can also, and you see that some people are resisting those kind of little nuance shifts, and that just gives you an agenda to start a more deeper and a more slow down first and and then take time to get, because we think we understand each other, or even with these little sentences I said to you, but we all use our own representation of these words and of these and what they mean, and so you really have to take your time and clarify what it is that you want, that you are actually saying when you say people before projects, because it's a nice soundbite, but to really,
it's a good catchphrase, but
it's a wonderful catchphrase, and it works, because when I was in this meeting, it was in the community center, and when I said it, I think that's the most important shift that we have to make. That a lot of people working in the center said yes. That's, if we can make that shift, because it's a shift to committing to each other, and no matter where money is coming from, we will find a way to keep us all involved in the way that we want to be involved.
Yeah,
and it's also very powerful, I think. Yeah.
Cool. I feel like that's such a subtle thing, but I know that resistance to it. Like when it takes some skill to present that in a way that people see, like, oh yeah, this is actually something I want, and not something I will do just because someone says it. And also the resistance is normal, because it's like people have to surrender their model of the world, or some part of it. It takes some changing the way they see themselves and the way they relate to the world and relate to other people. And it's really uncomfortable to not have a solid sense of, okay, this is where I stand, this is where the other people are, this is the nature of our relationship. And any shift in that realm, it's like unnerving, because like we're social animals. We need each other, and we need to feel safe and secure in the environments that we're in and that we spend time in regularly, that we see as our home base. And when someone in that space is like, let's maybe change the way we relate to each other a little bit, and it's like, no, why would you do that? And then it takes like a lot of massaging it in very gently, and creating a lot of space and ease around it, and not pushing. Just before we hit record, you said this awesome phrase of like not pulling the grass harder than it wants to grow naturally, because otherwise you will rip it out. I feel like that's the perfect image for what's going on there.
Yeah, exactly. And it's I think it's very important to also appreciate what all these roles that we devised in the past 50 years, sales manager, director, quality man, I don't know, they're all roles, and they all fit in some sort of mold that we use to form organizations. And when you when the products you want to produce fit the mold, then it's a very efficient and fast way to do it. It's also when I'm talking about building a platform, which I call a solution for a complex ecosystemic challenge. If you analyze the situation, you make sense of it together, and you come up with something that it can be solved, that the best solution is a product or a service, well, don't build a platform. Build this. Use that mold that is very well designed. It's also very rigid. But if you can use it, it offers you speed, it offers you efficiency, it offers you everything you need to really get that product or that service out. But if the outcome you want to produce needs something different than a product or a service, well, then you can maybe start looking at these other ways of organizing, and that's because it's also what you say when you try to nudge people, and it's not only when you nudge, but when you are able to seduce them to actually do it in practice, they will immediately tell you that it's way too slow. We can so we all have these norms about what is efficient and what is not, what is speed and what is not, and we are constantly comparing what we are doing to these values that have been around us for many years, and these values keep us in place under the motto that thou shalt be efficient, and which is actually not
the first rule.
The first rule of building products and services. And what if efficient is not going to work? Maybe we need effective sometimes, and so, but being able to play with it takes time, and you have to have a safe place where it's okay to fail. So that's also a lot of work to actually be able to create a space where people feel safe to innovate, feel safe to experiment, feel safe to learn.
Yeah. I'm wondering, because we've talked a lot about there's this different way of building community and relating to each other and working together that is kind of better in our view, at least, or just more fun, or just makes intuitive sense when you've experienced it. But I'm wondering if you could articulate your personal vision for why you're doing this work. Like, what is it that draws you to it?
I think I spent maybe the first 10 years of my career in management. Then I spent 10 years in investing, which is the first 10 years is when you are actually in organizations. The second 10 years is when you are looking at these organizations, which organizations are valuable, which organizations are not valuable, and what are the markets that they are focusing on. And I think what is even the step to investing was also a step that I really personally don't like to work in a hierarchy. I'm always switching to implicit culture when I'm in hierarchy. I don't like to be the boss, and I don't like to be bossed. And and I think a lot. I think this is for a lot of people is a truth. It's just this search for, because I think there's a lot of waste in hierarchies. There's a lot of waste. And what is the waste? The waste is not having everybody in the organization switched on. That is the waste. That is the waste. Yeah. So if you switch everybody on, what will happen?
Yeah.
I'm very curious about that. And so I'm working till I find a place where everybody's switched on and everybody really wants what we are doing. And then and probably you will see the nice thing about communities, also what you say, is they are emerging. But once they are emerging, you can be the source of the community. Like we had, Ananda made this nice remark when we were in the Zoom call, that she said, this community will end. This community will be short-lived. You can, but once the community emerges, there you can be the source of it. That's all nice and dandy, but you cannot turn it off. There's no off switch to a community, and that's very interesting. That's really interesting. You cannot turn it off. The community will decide itself.
I love that. Yeah, it's like the difference between a car and a tree. Like a car, when it breaks, it just like a traditional hierarchical organization, when it goes bankrupt, it just disappears. It starts to rust. Maybe there are some pieces that are sold for scrap metal price, but it's not gonna repair itself. But a tree or a plant or any other living thing, once it starts living, it will keep living, and even when it dies, like the parts of it will decompose and integrate into other organisms.
So community is a natural phenomenon.
Yeah, it's like as you said, an ecosystemic way of relating to each other rather than a mechanistical way of relating to each other.
It reminds me of, we were at the community center, and of course, in part we are self to blame for this problem, but when people came to the community center, and especially from companies, knowledge institutes, the municipality, they were all interested in the fruits of our cooperation. So we started using the tree as a metaphor. And when you have apples in an apple tree, everybody came to the center and said, oh yeah, we want those apples, and we can help you get those apples and whatever. But nobody was interested in caring for the tree. Nobody, because we need people to get fruits, and we need a good vibe, a safe space. It was just there was no interest for it. So we created this narrative around the tree, and it's also the forest floor where all the trees grow out. That for us is the social fabric of a neighborhood. It can host many trees. If the fabric is good, and if the narratives and the stories are good, you can host many trees. And some trees will fall over and disappear, but you compost them and you make new things out of them. And it's very circular, and it's people think circularity. I see circularity in everything. You have to be circular with how you spend your money. You have to be circular with all the assets that you create. Everything has to be reused, and that's I think something that goes wrong in the capitalist democratic model. Is that we are all doing the same thing, just a little bit different, but it's all these assets. It's all these assets building, all the same assets for the couple of variations,
and it's linear. It's all just going one way. I want to say, want to put in a good word for projects for a second, because we've been talking a lot about like people over projects and like the stuff in between. And what I feel like projects are really good at is to bring out that what is in between. Because if you just get into a room and everybody's there and you're like, okay, let's work on our vibes and social fabric. That's not really how it works, right? So you need something, some context to that you share, some content that is going on, that you're working on, or that you're relating through, or that you're like both excited about, or everybody's excited about, or maybe some people aren't as much, but then that is the thing that will bring out the tensions and the differences, and where you can start developing the skill of relating differently. And it's almost like almost becomes like this game where a project or the content is like the ball in a football game. The purpose of the ball isn't to, I don't know, it's not useful unless people start kicking it around. And the same with projects or products or services that you develop or whatever you do together. That thing is not useful unless you start doing something with it. And then the doing is what brings out the patterns and the relationships. And then you can start tweaking those, like in a football training session or something. You can be like, okay, maybe we do it a little bit differently this time. How about you run a little bit faster and then I pass you the ball. I don't know. I have no idea about football, but something like that.
yeah. It sounds familiar. Yeah. But what you said, what it brings up with me is two things: boundaries and coherence. I think if you want to play, if you want to do a project or whatever, is that when you have a ball and a group of people, what happens? But when you start drawing these lines and you say, this is out and this is in, and hey, watch here, there's a goal, and that's so. Then it starts to create a dynamic. It starts because there's in and out, and there's points and no points, and as a team, you want to bring the ball to the goal on the other side, and we all know that a team is more than the 11 players, at least if you want to win, and so they train a lot together. And when they are together on the field, they get into something which I call coherence, and which one I saw an interview that so it's a nice example is that they were interviewing this, I don't know, one of the soccer players, and they said, how do you know where the other players are? He says, I just know.
Yeah.
And because they were talking, because he was not looking to who he was shooting. He was just getting the ball, bang, and he shot, he shot the ball. So how do you know? Well, and that is something that is coherence. That's something we see in maybe in the military. That's something we see in sports. That's something. So how do you get that sense of being a team? That sense of knowing where everybody is without having to see them? That's coherence, and you cannot get it if you don't do projects together, I think, because and I think care is also very important, being together without this context of projects, but that's where we can more or less reflect on our own behavior and what was bringing us forward and what was not. And that actually is what a trainer is doing with these soccer teams. It's also analyzing what went wrong, helping people get in their personal strength, and then being an asset to the whole. So there's a lot of, I think, nice bridges between those stories of soccer and the story of blue economy. Yeah.
That's so interesting. How different metaphors make so much sense. And my go-to metaphors are like nature metaphors, because I studied biology, and that's like where I come from. And then recently through micro-solidarity and Rich, it's been boats and like sailing, and now it's like soccer came up, and I'm wondering what the next will be.
But there's
I like what you just said about like this syncing up with everyone else and intuitively knowing where everybody else is at. That's like a really good sign that there's something going right and the conditions are good for taking it a step further and like maybe growing together a little bit. When you like start vibing together, and it's like there's a sense of effortlessness, and you kind of just go, and you don't need to think about it. I think one way that it's also talked about sometimes is flow and team flow. And also one thing that stuck out to me is like the space in between. Like you can't just be working on projects together. You also need rest. A football team also needs rest, and maybe talking over some beer after the match about how it went is very valuable to the progress and to the learning and building relationship. So it needs this like interplay between tension and release, and like like pushing a little bit, trying something, engaging, rubbing up against each other, producing some friction, and then like releasing, relaxing, looking at how it went.
Absolutely. Cool.
So did you want to say something? Sorry, I was just looking at the notes I took before, because I'm curious if you have a sense of like, so there's people that come back to the community center, right? And to the different initiatives that are going on. What's your sense of why they come back? Why is it valuable to people? Maybe this is a very obvious answer to the question, but I'm still like interested in your perspective on like what value does this provide for people?
I think for people what are people in general, but the place where you live is important. It always is. It always is. And so when things are happening in your neighborhood, so let's say that the community center that we have now was actually the initiative of Patrick, who wanted to have solar panels on his own roof. But he was thinking, well, maybe other people in this neighborhood want it too, and we can get together. And so and he started inquiring, plan a meeting where everybody could get together. He was expecting 30 people, 60 showed up. So there's, the ability to get the pulse of the neighborhood, that's I think really important. What are people talking about? So facilitating those kind of story sharing, being the place where people can speak about what is actually happening to them in their home environment. We are doing one project now, which is something which was not very well named. The municipality called it energy poverty, which is, of course, a big problem in the sense that people have an energy bill that is more or less 10 to 15% of their income. So that's too high. And usually it is because they get all the old electric appliances that the friends had that take a lot of energy, but they said, you don't have a lot, why don't you take mine? So they have all these old, not energy efficient equipment in their house. So together with the municipality, we are trying to help families that are in the, but if you go to the door and you ring and you say, hey, are you energy poor? Everybody will say, no, me? No, I'm not energy poor. And they throw the door in your face. At the center we thought about, okay, how can you rephrase it? How can you reframe it? And but actually the stories that you are hearing from these families, they can really have a very big impact on yourself as being a member of this our center. So we are doing those conversations, and they really have an impact on the people that are they, on the one hand, they really want to do something for these people, but on the other hand, they are overwhelmed by the sadness that is so present just 3 minutes walking from your own front door. So it's also, and there you can see what the potential of social fabric is, because it is being aware that you don't have to drive very far to find people who are actually having problems, and that you can actually be of help.
Yep.
And so why do people come back, or why do people want to participate? Because they are doing something for their neighbor in potential. And it's something that Patrick, he runs our living lab. He always says, like, if you ask people, do you want to be a carpenter, or do you want to be a construction site worker? They all say no. And said, do you want to help me put a painting on the wall with Mrs. So? And then they say, yes, it's great. I come help you. Let's go do that. And so that's it. It's the proximity. It is the place where you live, that you naturally want to be a good and a nice place. So I guess that those are the assets that we have.
Yeah.
Being in the neighborhood, every odd job is just 5 minutes walking or biking. So you are actually living in the place where you're working.
Yeah.
And
wow.
That's really appealing. And it's also very something to become optimistic about, because you just need to activate people in their own neighborhoods.
Yeah. When you have that level of like coordination already present, then like solving things like circularity or improving sustainability of the energy production or the food consumption or whatever challenge you set your mind to, it suddenly becomes very realistic that you will at least achieve some degree of improvement in that domain. When you have like a functioning community that is able to hold change processes, that is able to hold tension between different needs and interests, then you like can actually together coordinate on a level where it's realistic that like something like circular economy is possible, or like participation of most people in a neighborhood, and that's really cool.
Yeah,
you have that. I'm really excited that this exists.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, we have an example of let's say we call it the Neighborhood Green Company. Which was an initiative that started because they wanted to cut all the trees in one street, and for some administrative reason. It was less costs or whatever it was, but the neighborhood got wind of it, and they all protested because it was a very single-minded view of a tree, just as a cost center. But also in when you frame it in the energy transition, is that they can bring a lot of cooling capacity to your neighborhood when in the summer, when everything is very hot. so you don't need aircos or all these other stuff. So the neighborhood very quickly, and in our center we more or less started protesting, more or less an activist approach in no, this cannot happen, we will not let it happen. We invited all the people from the municipality, and they asked us, okay, but what do you want? And that's usually where you don't have the right answers or the right expertise, but we just found it in together, and we told them what we wanted, and that's what happened. And it's now a group of people, a company, is a co-op, and they are having all these initiatives to get this our neighborhood more green, more butterflies, more fly, more birds. And it's actually spreading across the city. Other neighborhoods are taking up these methods. We are doing activities in other neighborhoods. So, yeah, that's something that makes you really happy and really nice to at least be a part of what started there. And it's done by, it's no longer our project, which is also very good, very that we can help start something, and then it just carries on its own. Yeah. So that's the nice things that happen. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so cool how what that just sparked for me is because I'm like involved in like a little bit of climate activism in Vienna, and like this classical protesting kind of activism, and I'm very critical of it as like a theory of change. For me, it's more like a tool, and that's what I saw when you just like talked about it. Is like, okay, we have this community, we are coordinated, we are in touch with each other, we know what's going on, we know what everybody wants, we have some level of agreement about what we want to happen in our neighborhood, and then this external factor comes in, like the municipality wants to cut down the trees. And then you can like coordinate quickly and pull out this tool. Like, okay, now we're gonna use this tool of protesting to stop doing that, and that will open up space for us to insert our vision that we can make up on the fly because we already have the connection. That's amazing. Yeah,
it's a nice way of putting it. And I think activism absolutely has a role. It's also, and it's something we want to focus more on, this role of citizen. I don't know if you know the book by John Alexander, Citizens, where the answer to everything is all of us. Yeah. Really very interesting, and more than interesting, but it's also a way of how can we more or less... how can we raise that number? We were talking about the 300 people that are in work groups. How can we increase that number to 600? How can we convince people in the neighborhood to... That's something like a challenge I put out once. How can we build something for the people in the neighborhood? I don't know what it is yet. We build something, and when we give that to the citizens in our neighborhood, that they will say, well, this was really, really nice of these guys to give us this. So maybe I will, 4 hours in a month, I will try to do something for that center. I said, well, if you take those numbers, 4 hours in a month, and you look at how many people are in the neighborhood, but if you just take it for those 300 people that we were aiming at, look at the capacity that is more or less... these numbers are staggering. But what you have to do is you be able to not think like a project, but to think like, how can I facilitate that you just are here for 4 months 4 hours in a month? What do we have to do to facilitate that?
So think like an organism. What does the structure of the cell need to look like that this little molecule can do its job in 4 hours per month? And it's very
opposite of what, because we also talk with the municipality about getting people employed. But this is a very small target because it's 40 hours, so you have to work 40 hours. It's full-time employment. Otherwise, we do. Well, if you just take that very small target, a lot of people will say, no, but that's not what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
I am looking for something different. I really want to participate, but not 40 hours. And somehow we say, okay, then you are unemployed. Okay, yeah, you're unemployed.
Yeah.
We can do nothing
You're
for you.
Silly.
Yeah, it's silly, and I think that's what is really the flexibility to look different at work and to be happy that somebody is willing to put in 4 hours of work and actually try to facilitate that instead of saying, well, 4 hours is nothing, we need somebody else. No, 4 hours is 4 hours. And it's it's a one person coming into the center every month. He's there maybe 4 hours or he's doing something in the neighborhood, but it's all these cross-pollinations of people meeting each other and asking each other, hey, why are you here? What are you doing? So that's social fabric, and that's the potential of getting a lot of people into your center.
Yeah. Nice.
So,
we're almost up on time, but I'm really curious about. We talked about boundaries before, like the lines on the soccer field and the rules that enable the emergence of the play of the process. And in Micro Solidarity, Richard Butler talks about it as like the boat that like the hull of the boat and the mast and the ballast and the hard structure that enables everything that's happening on the inside to happen. And I'm curious, what do you see, like what works in terms of boundaries to enable that emergence of social fabric and community for what you're doing? It's like some things that are good practices that you found valuable.
I found. I'm thinking about it. I have to, or maybe it's working with source from Tom Nixon, I think. Is really to appreciate that every game you want to play, let's not call it a project, but every time you want to play a game, there's somebody who wants to play it more than all the others. And he has something in his mind about this could be fun. And so this person that is sourcing a game, his main responsibility is on the one hand determine the edges of where the game, and that's in the game and that's no longer the game. So that's what he's telling us, where we play. And it's this, and then you get this game of emergence. It's listening, it's sense making. What do you want to play? How should this game look? And a lot of conversations, and then you more or less devise the first action, the first experiment. Yeah. And so I think working with source, of working with that role and actually saying like, okay, I think I can source this thing, but I need help on this and this and this. It really already builds a conversation that is more action-oriented. And you can still talk about a project, you can still organize any way you want, but you are still aware of the fact that there's always somebody who wants to go the extra mile with getting this game done, and that's the one that should be in play, and that's I think is very important, and it's also a new form of leadership. I think if you want to source this, and if you use that as a language, then people say, oh yeah, that would be really good if you could source this for us, and then we can do this and that. And I'm very good at XYZ, so I can help you with that part. I don't have the energy to source it, but I can do this for you, and I know him, and he can do that for you. And he really wants this to become a game, so that's a good energy. That kind of game playing is actually what we need. A new language, and we are already getting nice pointers from Rich about what language we could use and what skills we are active at. I think that's also very important, and I think the rest is just this whole repertoire of processes and things you can do, how to decide everything. It's all there, but you need this grounding, this safe place to actually start playing these games. Yeah. But I for me, working with source is a concept that I found it in the blue economy, the blue neighborhood economy. We call it the dream catcher, which is it's not a dreamer, but it's the dream catcher. And it has a lot of overlap with what Tom Nixon calls working with source. So we now use the book to more or less put more resolution on what it is that we actually mean when we say dream catcher. Yeah.
And how does that look like, that role of dream catcher? Is there like a process around it where someone can be like, I caught a dream. Can I propose it?
Yeah. Because we are in this shared environment, it's like I have a dream. I want a Ferrari. Oh, yeah, and then you say, oh, that's nice for you. That's a nice dream. But that's not a dream that you would say, yeah, I want to work really hard to help you get a Ferrari, which is it's a valid dream. That's not, but it's also like how can I more or less rephrase my dream and maybe listen to what it is that you want to do, and how can we more or less find this energy spot where we are where we both want to. It's more or less like the consent process, the finding that bigger space where others want to contribute, and it might not be exactly your dream, but it's a shared dream anyway, and that's and if you have that dot on the horizon, then you can be open. We all want to go there, but we have to make a first step, and then you say, okay, I think this, okay, let's do it, and probably it will get us somewhere in the proximity of that dot, and be open to whatever routes there might be to getting there.
Yeah. And in the community, how, like, do you as a group have a defined process for how that works, or is it more of this also emergent, like just informal talking about what would be nice, and then it just like kind of evolves and happens? Or
it's something we talk about, something we try to find ways to put it into practice. And it's pretty much, I would like to see more embodiment of that story, but at least it's a story that a lot of people know us for, and it's a way to build a coalition around a shared dream, and it works.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. Nice. Thank you so much, Pascal. Are there is there anything you would like to leave people with? Any resources you want to point people to, or how can people learn more about this if they're interested?
I will share the book with you, so you can put it in the notes, because
I'll put
I
that
want
in.
to get that correct. I just named something out of my head, but I don't know if. So I will send that to you. I think the Micro Solidarity website is something I can recommend to everybody.
I've been broadcasting that on all channels, and I will continue to do so.
Yes, so will I. And so that's a shared passion that you and I have, Jonas. And I hope we have a lot of opportunities to work on that shared passion together.
Yeah.
It'd be nice.
Cool. I'm looking forward to everything that comes. Looking forward to hearing more from your experiments and experience. And thanks so much. I learned a lot from you. And
thank you.
I
also learned a lot from you, and thank you for inviting me again. It's really nice to talk with you about these subjects. Thank you.
Likewise, my pleasure. Right. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too, Jonas. Bye-bye.